Hello, hello, hello! Welcome to Synergetic Games. My name is Natalie, and today we are going to be reading Hitch Hiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's I don't I don't know what that noise was. I'm really sorry that I'm late, but I got super distracted by Bridgerton. I'm not gonna lie. It was going great. It was all very dramatic, as one might expect. I'm sorry. But to be fair, I was watching with my mom, and we were gonna be good, watch a couple of episodes, and then before we knew it, we were like halfway through episode 3, and I was late for my stream, so my bad. But I know, right? But in my defense, it's 10 p.m. on a Saturday. I usually after work in a weekday, I'm just like, right, I've got home, I've got a few hours, easy peasy. Right, just today I've done literally nothing. I did a little bit of, that's not true. I watched It, Chapter 2, that was this morning. And after that, I did some cultivating of my city-town settlement thing in Going Medieval. One of my colonists left, and I was really annoyed because she was basically my favorite. Because my original settler died in a confrontation. And my second favorite, who was I felt like the spiritual successor of the settlement, she left. She mined herself into a corner, and when I finally built some staircases to get her out, she fucked off. If I knew she was gonna leave, I'd have left her in there. But like, and my eye strain is super intense lately. It doesn't matter what I stare at for however long, my eyes just hurt all the time. I'd have left her in there anyway. No, but she was so good. She was so clever, and it's really annoying because what gets me most about, or it seems to happen this way anyway, I need a particular colonist to with a particular skill, and they keep dying in confrontations. At the moment, I've just got this one building. I'm building a huge castle, and I've got the other building, which was the original settlement, and I've built a giant wall around that, and I just have most of them as archers just standing on a wall, just most of them standing on a wall and shooting down at the enemies, which largely works. Largely. But sometimes they break through the doors despite the mountain of wooden traps. But usually the colonist with the skill that I need at that particular time dies in said confrontation, so I have to like wait a decade to do the thing. What I really need is someone with a good smithing skill right now, but it's a really slow skill to build. And right now I'm just trying to build a massive limestone castle, and I'm running out of limestone. Like, I don't know where it is. This is why that colonist got stuck in a hole, because I found some limestone and everyone was mining it, and she dug herself into a hole, which I feel like is a pathing issue they need to work out. I wouldn't know, but they tend to do this. And then she just left. Like, how dare you, Hunilda? How dare you? And anyway, I'll stop. I'll stop ranting about Hunilda. How dare she? See? Nah, because, well, they wouldn't stop at her, but I'm really proud of my settlers at the moment, because they win, by and large, most of their conflicts without too much. Well, that's not true. The conflict, the one before the last one that I had, almost all of them were, like, gravely injured, but, you know, they managed to medicine themselves out of it. But this one, I was very proud of them. Only one of them was grievously injured that time. Thanks. Thanks, Evnock. I appreciate the sentiment. I'm glad I could be here for you in that way. Oh, no, that's okay. There will be a VOD for you. Don't worry, it won't be too long. But don't you worry. But thank you for popping by and saying hello, Gray. Welcome to the stream, and fare thee well. VODs do exist. Speaking of VODs, I have done a bunch of uploading today, so I'm all up to date except for tonight's stream, which I'll upload tomorrow, just so I can be on top of things. It's gonna be great. But yeah, so that's all up to date, and I haven't lost any videos recently, so that's nice. I like when I do that. Okay, but we'll stop. I think I've napped on enough for the time being. But you know, I feel like Going Medieval is definitely one of the games that I would love to do like little videos about, because I don't think I'd like to stream it because it can be quite slow, and I really don't know how to make building things interesting. So bite-sized installments would probably be the best for, like, city builders and things. For me, at any rate. I know plenty of streamers who can, you know, make that sound interesting, but it's not. It's not. I can't do that. Considering I can barely string a sentence together when I'm playing more active games. I don't think giving me the chance to think about it is gonna help, because I'll just get distracted and I will really screw the colony. Okay, I'll stop. Let's go. Chapter 4. Far away on the opposite spiral arm of the galaxy, 500,000 light-years from the star Sol, Zaphod Beetlebrox, president of the Imperial Galactic Government, sped across the seas of Damagran, his ion-drive delta boat winking and flashing in the Damagran sun. Damagran the hot, Damagran the remote, Damagran the almost totally unheard of, Damagran, secret home of the Heart of Gold. Zaphod. Okay. It says Zaphod. It's Zaphod. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's Zaphod in the film. Zaphod, does it matter? You tell me if it matters. Anyway. Secret home of the Heart of Gold. The boat sped on across the water. See, if you had Gray to back you up, I would probably be more convinced, but he's not here, so we're gonna do what I say today. Oh yes. I do need to get another mod though, preferably from someone in like a different time zone, so the people in this time zone can sleep. No, I've not come back. I need stuff. I mean, you. The boat spread across on the water. It would be some time before it reached its destination because Damagran is such an inconveniently arranged planet. It consists of nothing but middling to large desert islands separated by very pretty but annoyingly wide stretches of ocean. The boat sped on. Because of this topographical awkwardness, Damagran has always remained a deserted planet. This is why the Imperial Galactic Government chose Damagran for the Heart of Gold project, because it was so deserted and the Heart of Gold project was so secret. The boat zipped and skipped across the sea that lay between the main islands of the only archipelago. I say archipelago. I might be wrong. But archipelago is also an option. It sounds so wrong, but it's probably right. Of any useful size on the whole planet, Zaphod Beetlebrox was on his way from the tiny spaceport on Easter Island. The name was an entirely meaningless coincidence. In Galactispec, Easter means small, flat, and lightly brown, to the Heart of Gold Island, which by another meaningless coincidence was called France. One of the side effects of work on the Heart of Gold was a whole string of pretty meaningless coincidences. But it was not in any way a coincidence that today, the day of culmination of the project, the great day of unveiling, the day that the Heart of Gold was finally to be introduced to a marveling galaxy, was also a great day of culmination for Zaphod Beetlebrox. It was for the sake of this day that he first decided to run for the presidency. I say it worse than to annoy people, okay? A decision which had sent shockwaves of astonishment throughout the Imperial Galaxy. Zaphod Beetlebrox, president, not the Zaphod Beetlebrox, not the president. Many had seen it as clinching proof that the whole of known creation had finally gone bananas. Zaphod grinned and gave the boat an extra kick of speed. Zaphod Beetlebrox, adventurer, ex-hippie, good timer, crook, quite possibly, manic self-publicist, terribly bad at personal relationships, often thought to be completely out of lunch. President? Out to lunch, I apology. I thought that was weird. No one had gone bananas. Not in that way, at least. Only 6 people in the entire galaxy understood the principle on which the galaxy was governed. And they knew that once Zaphod Beetlebrox had announced his intention to run as president, it was more or less a fait accompli. He was ideal presidency fodder. What they completely failed to understand was why Zaphod was doing it. He banked sharply, shooting a wild wall of water at the sun. Today was the day. Today was the day when they would realize that what Zaphod had been up to. Today was what Zaphod Beetlebrox's presidency was all about. Today was also his 200th birthday, but that was just another meaningless coincidence. As he skipped his boat across the seas of Damagran, there's like an asterisk. Presidency fodder, asterisk. President, full title, President of the Imperial Galactic Government. As he skipped across the blah blah blah. Oh, wow. This footnote. There are actual footnotes. Okay, it goes on for a bit. My bad. The term imperial is kept through it. Is kept, though it is now, and oh my god, an acronym. The hereditary empire is nearly dead, and has been for centuries. In the last moments of his dying coma, he was locked in a stasis field which keeps him in a state of perpetual unchangingness. All his heirs are now long dead, and this means that without any drastic political upheaval, power has simply and effectively moved a rung or two down the ladder, and is now seen to be vested in a body which used to act simply as advisors to the Emperor. An elected governmental assembly, headed by a president elected by that assembly. In fact, it vests in no such place. I did not understand that footnote, but I totally did. Okay. Having read the footnote, as he skipped his boat across the seas of Damagran, he smiled quietly to himself. I'm going to have to read the footnotes as soon as I see them, just so we know. I wish I knew there were footnotes before I did that. Okay. Awesome. He smiled quietly to himself about what a wonderful, exciting day it was going to be. He relaxed and spread his two arms lazily along the seat back. He steered with an extra arm he'd recently had fitted just beneath his right one to help improve his ski boxing. Hey, he cooed to himself. You're a real cool boy, you. But his nerves sang a song, shriller than a dog whistle. The island of France was about 20 miles long, 5 miles across the middle, sandy and crescent-shaped. In fact, it seemed to exist not so much as an island in its own right as simply a means of defining the sweep and curve of a huge bay. This impression was heightened by the fact that the inner coast... Oh my god, Okay, sorry, I've just realized. There's even more of that footnote. My god. I'll read this. I'm finishing this thought that I have right here. Curve of a huge bay. This impression was heightened by the fact that the inner coastline of the crescent consisted almost entirely of steep cliffs. From the top of the cliff, the land sloped slowly down 5 miles to the opposite shore. On top of the cliff stood a reception committee. It consisted in large part of the engineers and researchers who built the Heart of Gold, mostly humanoid. But here and there were a few reptiloid atomineers, 2 or 3 green sylph-like Megalacticans, an octopedic physicus-structuralist, or two, and a hulu-vu. A hulu-vu is a super intelligent shade of the color blue. Oh god, I need this hulu-vu to help me read these fucking words sometimes. I swear, I apologize for the language, but yeah. All except the hulu-vu were resplendent in their multicolored ceremonial lab coats. The hulu-vu had been temporarily refracted into a freestanding prism for the occasion. Okay, now I'm going to read the... It is my first time reading, apparently. The president, this is going back to the footnote, by the way, to be clear, in particular, is very much a figurehead. He wields no real power whatsoever. He is apparently chosen by the government, but the qualities he is required to display are not those of leadership, but those of finely judged outrage. For this reason, the president is always a controversial choice, always an infuriating but fascinating character. His job is not to wield power, but to draw attention away from it. On those criteria, Zaphod Beetlebrox is one of the most successful presidents in the galaxy has ever had. He has already spent 2 of his 10 presidential years in prison for fraud. Very, very few people realize that the president and the government have virtually no power at all. And of those few people, only 6 know whence ultimate political power is wielded. Most of the others secretly believe that the ultimate decision-making process is handled by a computer. They couldn't be more wrong. Carrying on from the footnote, there was a mood of immense excitement thrilling through all of them. Oh my god, what is my mouth and what is my brain doing? It is taking every possible word and mixing it up, I swear to God. It is not going well today. There was a mood of immense excitement thrilling through all of them. Together and between them, they had a... Yeah, I think I was fine, and then I forgot what I was fine about. And I'm like, not fine anymore. Oh my god, that was weird. Oh yeah, right, sorry. Refracted prism for the occasion. There was a mood of immense excitement thrilling through them all. Together and between them, they had gone to and beyond the furthest limits of physical laws, restructured the fundamental fabrics of matter, stained, twisted, and broken the laws of possibility and impossibility, but still the greatest excitement of all seemed to be to meet a man with an orange sash around his neck. An orange sash was what the president of the galaxy traditionally wore. It might not even have made much difference to them if they'd known exactly how much power the president of the galaxy actually wielded. None at all. Only 6 people in the galaxy knew that the job of the galactic president was not to wield power, but to attract attention away from it. Zaphod Beetlebrox was amazingly good at his job. The crowd gasped, dazzled by the sun and seamanship, as the presidential speedboat zipped around the headland into the bay. It flashed and shone as it came skating across the sea in wide, skidding turns. In fact, it didn't need to touch the water at all, because it was supported on a hazy cushion of ionized atoms. But just for effect, it was fitted with fine fin blades, oh my gosh, which could be lowered into the water. They slashed sheets of water hissing into the air, carved deep gashes into the sea, which swayed crazily and sank back, foaming in the boat's wake as it careered across the bay. Zaphod loved effect. It was what he was best at. He twisted the wheel sharply. The boat slewed around in a wild, scything skid beneath the cliff face and dropping to rest lightly on the rocky waves. Within seconds, he ran out onto the deck and waved and grinned over the 3 billion people. The 3 billion people weren't actually there, but they watched his every gesture through the eyes of a small robot tri-D camera. Tri-D camera, okay. Which hovered obsequiously in the air nearby. The antics of the president always made amazingly popular tri-D. That's what they were for. He grinned again. 3,000,000,006 people. Didn't know it, but today would be a bigger antic than anyone had bargained for. The robot camera homed in for a close-up on the more popular of the two heads of his two heads, I apologize. And he waved again. He was roughly humanoid in appearance, except for the extra head and third arm. His fair tousled hair stuck out in random directions. His blue eyes glinted with something completely undefinable, and his chins were almost always unshaven. A 22-foot-high transparent globe floated next to his boat, rolling and bobbing, glistening in the bright sun. Inside it floated a wide semicircular sofa upholstered in glorious red leather. The more the globe bobbed and rolled, the more the sofa stayed perfectly still, steady as an unupholstered rock. Again, all done for effect as much as anything. Zaphod stepped through the wall of the globe and relaxed on the sofa. He spread his two arms along the back, and with the third, brushed some dust off his knee. His head looked about, smiling. He put his feet up. At any moment, he thought he might scream. Water boiled up beneath the bubble. It seethed and shouted. The bubble surged into the air, bobbing and rolling on the water spout. Up it climbed, throwing stilts of light at the cliff. Up it surged on the jet, the water falling from beneath it, crashing back into the sea hundreds of feet below. Zaphod smiled, picturing himself. A thoroughly ridiculous form of transport, but a thoroughly beautiful one. At the top of the cliff, the globe wavered for a moment. Tipped on a railed ramp rolled down into a small concave platform and riddled to a halt. To tremendous applause, Zaphod Beetlebrox stepped out of the bubble, his orange sash blazing in the light. The president of the galaxy had arrived. He waited for the applause to die down, then raised his hand in greeting. "Hi," he said. A government spider sidled up to him and attempted to press a copy of his prepared speech into his hands. Pages 3 to 7 of the original version were at the moment floating soggily on the Damagran Sea, some 5 miles out from the bay. Pages 1 to 2 had been salvaged by the Damagran Frond-Crested Eagle, I apologize, and had already become incorporated into an extraordinary new form of nest, which the eagle had invented. It was constructed largely of papier-mâché, and it was virtually impossible for newly hatched baby eagles to break out of it. The Damagran Frond-Crested Eagle had heard of the notion of survival of the species, but wanted no truck with it. Zaphod Beetlebrox would not be needing his set speech, and he gently deflected the one being offered to him by the spider. "Aye," he said again. Everyone beamed at him, at least nearly everyone. He singled out Trillian from the crowd. Trillian was a girl that Zaphod had picked up recently whilst visiting a planet, just for fun, incognito. She was a slim, darkish humanoid with long waves of black hair, a full mouth, and an odd little knob of a nose, and ridiculously brown eyes. With her red headscarf knotted in a particular way, and her long, flowing, silky brown dress, she looked vaguely Arabic. Not that anyone there had ever heard of an Arab, of course. The Arabs had very recently ceased to exist, and even when they had existed, they were 500,000 light years from Damagran. Trillian wasn't anybody in particular, or so Zaphod claimed. She just went around with him rather a lot and told him what she thought of him. "Hi, honey," he said to her. She flashed him a quick, tight smile and looked away. Then she looked back for a moment and smiled more warmly. But by that time he was looking at something else. "Hi," he said to a small knot of creatures from the press, who were standing nearby, wishing that he would stop saying hi and get on with the quotes. He grinned at them particularly because he knew that in a few moments he would be giving them one hell of a quote. The next thing he said, though it was not a lot of use to them, one of the officials of the party had irritably decided that the president was clearly not in the mood to read the deliciously turned speech that had been written for him, and had flipped the switch on the remote control device in his pocket. Away in front of them, a huge white dome that bulged against the sky cracked down the middle. Pardon me. Split and slowly folded itself down the ground. Everyone gasped, although they had known perfectly well what it was going to do, because they'd built it that way. Beneath it lay uncovered a huge starship, 150 meters long, shaped like a sleek running shoe, perfectly white and mind-bogglingly beautiful. At the heart of it, unseen, lay a small gold box, which carried within it the most brain-wrenching device ever conceived. A device which made this starship unique Oh my god. Brain, read. Stop not reading. A device which made this starship unique in the history of the galaxy. A device after which the ship had been named the Heart of Gold. Wow, said Zaphod Beeblebrox to the Heart of Gold. There wasn't much else he could say. He said it again because he knew it would annoy the press. Wow. The crowd turned their faces back to him expectantly. He winked at Trillian, who raised her eyebrows and widened her eyes at him. She knew what he was about to say and thought him a terrible show-off. This is really amazing, he said. This really is truly amazing. That is so amazingly amazing. I think I'd like to steal it. A marvelous presidential quote. Absolutely true to form. The crowd laughed appreciatively. The newsmen gleefully punched buttons on their sub-ether newsmatics. And the president grinned. As he grinned, his heart screamed unbearably, and he fingered the small paralyzomatic bomb he had nestled quietly in his pocket. Finally, he could bear it no more. He lifted his hands up to the sky, let out a wild whoop in major thirds, threw the bomb to the ground, and ran forward through the sea of suddenly frozen beaming smiles. No, my brain isn't working, and for that I apologize, but I'm gonna see how long chapter 5 is. Oh my god, look, footnotes, all the footnotes, okay. Okay. We'll read this next chapter and then we'll call it. It's quite a long chapter, so I feel like brains out for it. They are, and I'm sorry for my crappy reading. It's worse than usual. It doesn't help that there's so many random words. This is the main reason. One of the main reasons that I was a bit hesitant about reading Hitch Hiker's Guide to the Galaxy was all the made up words that I've never seen before in my life. But no, I do enjoy it, but you know, I just everyone in those books are perfectly cromulent. Don't say things I don't understand. It's fine. But they are random. And even if they're not random, I've never seen them before, probably, which makes reading them even harder. Especially if you're doing it first time out loud, it's very intimidating. I should read ahead a bit more, but I don't. Anyway, sorry. Prostetnic Vogon Jelps was not a pleasant sight, even for other Vogons. His highly domed nose rose high above a small piggy forehead. His dark green rubbery skin was thick enough for him to play a game of Vogon civil service politics, and play it well, and waterproof enough for him to survive indefinitely at sea depths of up to 1,000 feet, with no ill effects. Not that he ever went swimming, of course. His busy schedule would not allow it. He was the way he was because billions of years ago, when the Vogons had first crawled out of the sluggish primeval seas of Vogsphere. It's got Vogs and it's got Sphere, so that's what we're doing. And had lain panting and heaving on the planet's virgin shores, when the first rays of the bright young Vauxhall sun had shone across them that morning. It was as if the forces of evolution had simply given up on them there and then, had turned aside in disgust and written them off as an ugly and unfortunate mistake. They never evolved again. They should never have survived. The fact that they did is some kind of tribute to the thick-willed, slug-brained stubbornness of the creatures. Evolution, they said to themselves, who needs it? And what nature refused to do for them, they simply did without until such a time as they were able to rectify the grosser anatomical inconveniences with surgery. Meanwhile, the natural forces of the planet Vogosphere had been working overtime to make up for their earlier blunder. They brought forth scintillating, jeweled, scuttling crabs, which the Vogons ate, smashing their shells with iron mallets. Tall, aspiring trees of breathtaking slenderness and color, which Vogons cut down to burn the crab meat with. Elegant gazelle-like creatures with silken coats and dewy eyes that the Vogons would catch and sit on. They were no use as transport because their backs would snap instantly, but the Vogons sat on them anyway. Thus the planet Vogosphere whiled away the unhappy millennia until the Vogons suddenly discovered the principles of interstellar space travel. With a few short Vogue years, every last Vogon had migrated to the Megabrantis cluster, the political hub of the galaxy, and now formed the immensely powerful backbone of the galactic civil service. I've lost my way. Galactic civil service, okay. They have attempted to acquire learning, they have attempted to acquire style and social grace, but in most respects, the modern Vogon is little different from his primitive forebears. Every year they import 27,000 scintillating jeweled scuttling crabs from their native planet and while away a happy drunken night smashing them to bits with iron mallets. Prostetnic Vogon Schultz was a fairly typical Vogon in that he was thoroughly vile. Also, he did not like Hitch Hikers. Somewhere in a small dark cabin, buried deep in the intestines of Prostetnic Vogon Schultz's flagship, a small match flared nervously. The owner of the match was not a Vogon, but he knew all about them and was right to be nervous. His name was Ford Prefect. It's a thing, it's a footnote. There's a footnote, and I'm gonna read it all. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read that footnote so hard. Okay, cool. Ford Prefect's original name is only pronounceable in an obscure Betelgeusian dialect, now virtually extinct since the great collapsing Hrung disaster. Hrung disaster of Groll, of Gal, Sid, year 03758, which wiped out all of the old Praxi-Beetle communications on Betelgeuse 7. Ford's father was the only man on the entire planet to survive the great collapsing Hrung disaster, by an extraordinary coincidence that he was never able to satisfactorily to explain. The whole episode is shrouded in deep mystery. In fact, no one ever knew what a Hrung was, nor why it had chosen to collapse on Betelgeuse 7 particularly. Ford's father magnanimously waving aside the clouds of suspicion that he had inevitably that had inevitably settled around him came to live on Beetlejuice 5, where he both fathered and uncled Ford. In memory of his now dead race, he christened him in the ancient Paraxi Beetle tongue. Because Ford never learned to say his original name, his father eventually died of shame, which is still a terminal disease in some parts of the galaxy. The other kids at school nicknamed him Ix, which in the language of Beetlejuice 5 translates as boy who is not able to satisfactorily explain what a hrung is, nor why it should choose to collapse on Beetlejuice 7. Got it. Got it. Got that footnote good. He looked about the cabin, but could see very little. Strange monstrous shadows loomed and leaped with the tiny flickering flame, but all was quiet. He breathed a silent thank you to the Dentricis. The Dentricis are an unruly tribe of gourmands, a wild but pleasant bunch whom the Vogons had recently taken to employing as catering staff on their long-haul fleets, on the strict understanding that they keep to themselves and very much to themselves. This suited the Dentricis fine, because they loved Vogon money, which is one of the hardest currencies in space, but loathed the Vogons themselves. The only sort of Vogon the Dentrasi, I'm going to settle on a pronunciation at some point. I'm going with Dentrasi. Dentrasi liked to see was an annoyed Vogon. It was because of this tiny piece of information that Ford Prefect was not now a whiff of hydrogen, ozone, and carbon monoxide. He heard a slight groan. By the light of the match, he saw a heavy shape moving slightly on the floor. Quickly, he shook the match out, reached in his pocket, and found what he was looking for to take it out. He ripped it open and shook it. He crouched on the floor. The shape moved again. Ford Prefect said, "I bought some peanuts." Arthur Dent moved and groaned again, muttering incoherently. "Here, have some," urged Ford, shaking the packet again. If you've never been through a matter transference beam before, you've probably lost some salt and protein. The beer you had should have cushioned your system a bit. Said Arthur Dent. He opened his eyes. "It's dark," he said. "Yes," said Ford Prefect. "It's dark." "No light," said Arthur Dent. "Dark, no light." One of the things Ford Prefect had always found the hardest to understand about humans was their habit of continually stating and repeating the very, very obvious. As in, "It's a nice day," or "You're very tall," or "Oh dear, you seem to have fallen down a 30-foot well. Are you all right?" At first, Ford had formed a theory to account for this strange behavior. If human beings don't keep exercising their lips, he thought, their mouths would probably seize up. After a few months' considerations and observations, he abandoned this theory in favor of a new one. If they don't keep on exercising their lips, he thought, their brains start working. After a while, he abandoned this one as well as being obtrusively cynical, and he decided obstructively cynical. My bad. And decided he quite liked human beings after all, but he always remained desperately worried about the terrible number of things they didn't know about. Yes, he agreed with Arthur. No light. He helped Arthur he helped Arthur to some peanuts. How do you feel? He asked him. Like a military academy, said Arthur. Bits of me keep on passing out. Ford stared at him blankly in the darkness. If I asked you where the hell we were, said Arthur weakly, would I regret it? Ford stood up. We're safe, he said. Oh, good, said Arthur. Oh, that's my normal state of being. I apologize. If I gave any other impression, I've done well. I think. Oh my god, where am I? We're in a small galley cabin, said Ford. In one of the spaceships of the Vogon constructor fleet. Oh, said Arthur. This is obviously some strange usage of the word safe that I wasn't previously aware of. Ford struck another match to help him search for a light switch. Monstrous shadows leapt and loomed again. Arthur struggled to his feet and hugged himself apprehensively. Hideous alien shapes seemed to throng about him. The air was thick with musty smells which sidled into his lungs without identifying themselves, and a low, irritating hum kept his brain from focusing. How did we get here? He asked, shivering slightly. We hitched a lift, said Ford. Excuse me, said Arthur. Are you trying to tell me that we just stuck out our thumbs and some green bug-eyed monster stuck its head out and said, Hi fellas, hop right in. I can take you as far as the Basingstoke roundabout? Well, said Ford, the thumb's an electric sub-ether signaling device. The roundabout's at Bernard's star 6 light years away, but otherwise that's more or less right. And the bug-eyed monster is green, yes. Fine, said Arthur. When can I go home? You can't, said Ford Prefect, and found the light switch. Shade your eyes, he said, and turned it on. Even Ford was surprised. Good grief, said Arthur. Is this really the interior of a flying saucer? Prostetnik Vogon Jeltz heaved his unpleasant green body round the control bridge. He always felt vaguely irritable after demolishing populated planets. He wished that someone would come and tell him that it was all wrong, so that he could shout at them and feel better. He flopped as heavily as he could onto his control seat, and the hope that it would break and give him something to be genuinely angry about, but it only gave a complaining sort of creak. Go away, he shouted at a young Vogon guard, who entered the bridge at that moment. The guard vanished immediately, feeling rather relieved. He was glad it wouldn't now be him who delivered the report they'd just received. The report was an official release which said that a wonderful new form of spaceship drive was at this moment being unveiled at a government research base on Damagran, which would henceforth make all hyperspatial express routes unnecessary. Another door slid open, but this time the Vogon captain didn't shout because it was the door from the galley. Page, turn! From the galley quarters where the Denstrasis prepared his meals. A meal would be most welcome. A huge furry creature bounded through the door with his lunch tray. It was grinning like a maniac. Prostetnik Vogon Jeltz was delighted. He knew that when a Denstrasi looked that pleased with itself, there was something going on somewhere on the ship that he could get very that he could get very angry indeed about it. Ford and Arthur stared around them. "Well, what do you think?" said Ford. "It's a bit squalid, isn't it?" Ford frowned at the grubby mattresses, unwashed cups, and unidentified bits of smelly alien underwear that lay around the cramped cabin. "Well, this is a working ship, you see," said Ford. These are the Dentrasi sleeping quarters. I thought you said they were called Vogons or something." "Yes," said Ford. "The Vogons run the ship. The Dentrasis are the cooks. They let us on board." "I'm confused," said Arthur. "Here, have a look at this," said Ford. He sat down on the mattress and rummaged about in his satchel. Arthur prodded the mattress nervously and then sat on it himself. In fact, he had very little to be nervous about, because all mattresses grown in the swamps of Squornshellus Zeta are very thoroughly killed and dried before being put to service. Very few have ever come to life again. Oh my God. Ford handed the book to Arthur. "What is it?" asked Arthur. "The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a sort of electronic book. It tells you everything you need to know about anything. That's its job." Arthur turned it over nervously in his hands. "I like the cover," he said. "Don't panic. It's the first helpful or intelligible thing anyone said to me all day." "I'll show you how it works," said Ford. He snatched it from Arthur, who was still holding it as if it was a 2-week dead lark, and pulled it out of its cover. "You press this button here. You see the screen lights up giving you the index. A screen about 3 inches by 4 lit up the characters and began to flicker across the surface. You want to know about Vogons? So enter that name. So." His fingers tapped some more keys. "There we are. The word Vogons Constructor Fleets flared in green across the screen." Ford pressed the large red button on the bottom of the screen. The words began to undulate across it. At the same time, the book began to speak the entry as well in a quiet, measured voice. This is what the book said. "Vogon Constructor Fleets. Here is what to do if you want to get a lift from a Vogon. Forget it. They are one of the most unpleasant races in the galaxy. Not actually evil, but bad-tempered, bureaucratic, officious, and callous. They wouldn't even lift a finger to save their own grandmothers from ravenous bug bladder beasts of Troll without orders signed and in triplicate, sent in, sent back, queried, lost, found, subjected to public inquiry, lost again, and finally buried in soft cleat for 3 months and recycled as firelighters. The best way to get a drink out of a Vogon is to stick your fingers down his throat. Ugh. And the best way to irritate him is to feed his grandmother to the ravenous bug bladder beast of Troll. On no account allow a Vogon to read poetry at you." Arthur blinked at it. "What a strange book. How did we get a lift then?" "That's the point. It's out of date now," said Ford, sliding the book back into its cover. "I'm doing the field research for the new revised edition, and one of the things I'll have to do is include a bit about how the Vogons now employ Dentrasi cooks, which gives us a rather useful little loophole." A pained expression crossed Arthur's face. "But who are the Dentrasi?" he said. Great guys, said Ford. They're the best cooks. And they're the best cooks and the best drink mixers. And they don't give a wet slap about anything else. Pardon me. And they always help hitchhikers aboard, partly because they like the company, but mostly because it annoys the Vogons, which is exactly the sort of thing you need to know if you're an impoverished hitchhiker trying to see the marvels of the universe for less than 30 Altarian dollars a day. And that's my job. Fun, isn't it? Arthur looked lost. It's amazing, he said, and frowned at one of the other mattresses. Unfortunately, I got stuck on Earth for rather longer than I intended, said Ford. I came for a week and got stuck for 15 years. But how did you get there in the first place, then? Easy. I got a lift with a teaser. A teaser? Yeah. What is a teaser? Teasers are usually rich kids with nothing to do. They cruise around looking for planets which haven't made interstellar contact yet and buzz them. Buzz them? Arthur began to feel that Ford was enjoying making life difficult for him. Yeah, said Ford. They buzz them. They find some isolated spot where, with very few people around, then land right by some poor unsuspecting soul whom no one's ever going to believe, and then strut up and down in front of them wearing silly antennae on their head and making beep-beep noises. Rather childish, really. Ford leant back on the mattress with his hands behind his head and looked infuriatingly pleased with himself. Ford, insisted Arthur. I don't know if this sounds like a silly question, but what am I doing here? Well, you know that, said Ford. I rescued you from the Earth. And what's happened to the Earth? It's been demolished. Has it? Arthur said levelly. Yes, it just boiled away into space. Look, said Arthur. I'm a bit upset about that. Ford frowned to himself and seemed to roll the thought around his head. Yes, I can understand that, he said at last. Understand that? Shouted Arthur. Understand that? Ford sprang up. Keep looking at the book, he hissed urgently. What? Don't panic. I'm not panicking. Yes, you are. All right, so I'm panicking. What else is there to do? You just come along with me and have a good time. The galaxy's a fun place. You'll need to have this fish in your ear. I beg your pardon? Asked Arthur, rather politely, he thought. Ford was holding up a small glass jar which quite clearly had a small yellow fish wiggling around in it. Arthur blinked at him. He wished there was something simple and recognizable he could grasp hold of. He would have felt safe alongside the Dentrasi underwear and the piles of scornshellous mattresses, and the man from Beetlejuice holding up a small yellow fish and offered to put it in his ear. And offering to put it in his ear, he had been able to see just a small packet of cornflakes. But he couldn't. And he didn't feel safe. Suddenly, a violent noise leapt from no source he could identify. He gasped in terror at what sounded like a man trying to gargle whilst fighting off a pack of wolves. Shush, said Ford. Listen, it might be important. Important? It's the Vogon captain making an announcement on the tannoy. You mean that's how the Vogons talk? Listen, I can't speak Vogon. You don't need to. Just put this in your ear. Ford had a lightning movement, clapped his hand to Arthur's ear, and he had the sudden sickening sensation of the fish slithering deep into his oral tract. Gasping with horror, he scrabbled at his ear for a second or so, but then slowly turned goggle-eyed with wonder. He was experiencing the oral equivalent of looking at a picture of two black silhouetted faces and suddenly seeing it as a picture of a white candlestick. Optical illusions. I can't say it! There, that. Is it oral or oral? Because they sound the same. Said it right, don't joke with me. I swear to God. You're just embracing chaos. I would expect you to do nothing less. White candlestick. Or of looking at a lot of coloured dots on a piece of paper which suddenly resolve themselves into a figure 6, meaning that your optician is going to charge you a lot of money for a new pair of glasses. He was still listening to the howling gargles. He knew that, only now, it had somehow taken the semblance of perfectly straightforward English. This is what he heard. Which we'll get to in chapter 6! Woo! But for now, we're gonna leave it there. I will, bed. Go, you sleep, so will I. Things will be great. Thank you so much for being here and, tolerating my crappy reading. It was especially bad today. I'll get used to it, I hope. But I will... Tolerate is a strong word. I feel like it's strong enough. But anyway, I'm gonna leave you here. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I do appreciate it, as always. So thank you for your company. But for the time being, I'm gonna leave you here. I will see you on Monday for more Final Fantasy VIII. This VOD will be uploaded tomorrow at some point. And, yeah, I'll see you then. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye, guys.